The year is 2012, and Magnus has been taking the chess world by storm, beating every chess heavyweight you can think of. Claiming first place in the London Chess Classic, the Grand Slam Final, and the Segunda Grand Chess Fiesta. But his toughest challenge would come in the 19th round of the World Blitz Championship, when he faced Alexander Morovich, a Russian grandmaster known for his creativity and original playstyle. The game started with Magnus moving c4, and Morovich without wasting a second responds with e6. After a few moves, the game turns into an English opening, with black putting pressure on the center with his pawns and white using his minor pieces to try and retake it. On the third move of the game, we already got our first trade, when Morovich takes Magnus' c-pawn. Magnus decides to secure his own king by going bishop to g2 and then castling kingside before focusing on the pawn assault Moro is putting on him. Morovich is breaking all the rules of chess, because in the first 5 moves he made, he hasn't developed any of his minor pieces. Magnus takes 10 seconds to think and realizes that this pawn structure Moro has set up is going to become a problem, and decides to start an assault on it with his own pawns. First by going a4 and then b3. Magnus decides to take the b3 pawn with his queen and put some pressure on Moro's e6 pawn. After some development moves from both players, Magnus realizes that Morovich has a 20-second lead on him, so he decides to push his knight to f6, trying to punish Moro for not developing his minor pieces enough. The next few moves, Magnus tries to get as many of his pieces active as fast as possible. Moro castles kingside and welcomes Magnus' attack, saying, "Come on, let's see what you got," fully trusting in himself and his position. And on the 15th move, Magnus goes e4. He soon realizes that he might have overplayed his hand in his assault on Moro, overextending a bit, neglecting to secure all of his pieces, leaving his queen open for a counter attack from Black's knight after going c5. Magnus knows moving his queen would also leave his d3 pawn almost completely unprotected, which could lead to a hole in his entire formation. Left with only a few options, Magnus decides to sacrifice, wait for it, to make sure his queen keeps protecting the d3 pawn and the pressure stays on the e6 square. A check from the bishop forces Magnus to put his king in the corner of the board, and after e takes f5, Magnus chooses to take the f5 pawn with his rook, setting a potential mate with his rook and knight combo. Black responds with queen going e7 and the knight goes g4, further threatening the mate. After more than 30 seconds of thinking, Morovich makes one of the best moves of the game by going bishop to c8, destroying Magnus Carlsen's entire plan to threaten the checkmate, x-raying the knight and possibly setting up the bishop to go e6, a move that will force Magnus to reposition his queen and further break up the whole attack. Left a few choices, Magnus goes all in, checking the king by going knight to f6. Moro takes with the pawn, Magnus recaptures with the bishop. Seeing the checkmate with rook to g5, he decides to sacrifice the queen by taking the rook with his bishop and recapturing bishop by threatening the queen on the next move by going bishop to e6. Magnus knows if he can just get his queen on the other side of the board, he can create some serious problems for Black's king. But with 2 rooks, 2 bishops and a knight, this might be a difficult task for his queen, bishop and knight trio. What follows is both players setting up their pieces, with Magnus trying to get into the perfect position to launch an attack, and Moro finding the best possible square so that all his pieces complement each other perfectly, leaving no room for Magnus to find any weaknesses. At this moment, Moro knows he has a pass pawn and that he should do everything possible to get it promoted. Both players have 15 seconds on the clock. Morovich starts to bring his king in the game by going king to f7, and Magnus starts to launch his own attack by pushing the pawns forward, trying to make something happen on the king side. And Moro slides his rook to the second row, completely blocking White's king from pushing forward. Magnus pushes his pawn and Moro decides to go for a bishop trade, not seeing that this would leave his pawn unprotected, and Magnus pounces. First by trading bishops and then capturing the pawn of the queen. Magnus smells blood in the water and he suddenly gets a second wind, going all in on his attack, pushing his king forward, and on the next move going h5. Moro shuffles around his rook, looking nervous, but Magnus is out for blood, checking Moro consecutively. Pushing his king, trying to end this as fast as possible. Moro defends, but Magnus checks him again by going queen to b3. Moro retreats to the back rank. Magnus pushes his king g4, and again by going king h4, but this was the wrong move. In his attempt to trap Moro, he ends up trapping his own king because black pushes his rook to d4, completely shutting the back door on white's king. And in a split second the tables have turned again, because after knight g3 and rook h4 it's checkmate. Magnus tries to do everything in his power to stop Moro, giving him a total of 9 checks in 11 moves, even forcing perpetual checkmate. A rule that states when you repeat the same move 3 times in a row, the game ends in a draw. But after Moro moves king h8, there were no more checks to give and Magnus was left with only one move to make, and that was resign.